Well, here we are. We have finally reached the last episode of the Moving Forward series for 2021, and after 4 months since I started this series, and definitely took a little bit longer than I anticipated to finish this series, we finally reached to talk about the defending MLS Cup champion, the Columbus Crew, in the Moving Forward series. And I also want to thank a lot of these Crew fans that is watching this video right now, and that, I appreciate your patience in terms of me finally get to the point where I can talk about your team in the Moving Forward series, because it probably isn't very easy. That 3 months ago they were definitely on top of the world and kind of like in cloud nine with the way their team won MLS Cup, and now they have to wait 3 more months before I actually talk about them in the Moving Forward series. But that being said, this season the Crew finished with a record of 12-6-5, and they finished with 41 points. They scored 36 goals this season while allowing 21 goals with a goal differential of plus 15. 21 goals that they conceded, I believe that's the second best in the Eastern Conference, and the same can go with the goal differential, which only the Philadelphia Union has a better goal differential and also conceded least goals than the Columbus Crew did in the regular season in the Eastern Conference. They finished third in the Eastern Conference, and they of course won MLS Cup against the Seattle Sounders, but unfortunately in the MLS's back tournament they of course lost to Minnesota in the round of 16 after they were the only team in the MLS's back tournament to go undefeated in the group stage. Now, for your MVP of this team, I'm going to go with Lucas Zarian, although I know there's going to be people that's going to say otherwise, because of when you look at the stats number, his stats isn't as impressive as what you would consider me crowning him as the MVP of this team. And I also know that there's going to be some people say the only reason why I put him as MVP is because of his performance in the MLS Cup, which in some extents that's kind of the reason why I put him as an MVP, but there's other reason because of that. I remember when he was in the MLS's back tournament, he was definitely receiving a lot of MVP discussion of how great he was during the group stage of the tournament. And I think if Columbus didn't lose to Minnesota in that round of 16 and kind of just bombed out of that tournament, Zarian would definitely get some recognition of potentially become the MVP of that tournament. And even during the regular season, where when he is healthy, which is not a lot of time that was the case for last season, but when he's healthy, he's definitely one, if not the best number 10 in the league. And I think him alongside with Reynoso are probably the best number 10 signing that I've seen last offseason teams were able to acquire. And what's interesting is both Zarian and Reynoso were able to bought for their respective MLS Cup around the same amount of money. Columbus, I believe, pay about $5.5 million for Zarian, and Reynoso, I also think Minnesota pay about 5.5 to about $6.5 million to acquire his service. And even though that seems like a lot of money, when you look at how both of those guys look, and especially how Zarian made a big impact to this Columbus Crew team, especially in that number 10 position, yeah, it was worth every single penny that they were able to pay Tigres to get him last off-season. But, honorable mention definitely will go with Pedro Santos and Jerzy Zardes. Zardes had another incredible year, finish as the top goal scorer, and was actually tied with Rui Diaz in terms of second place as the Golden Boot winner with 12 goals this season. And then of course Pedro Santos finished as the top assist leader, and this was definitely a bounce back year for Pedro Santos after what happened last year, where he had a horrid year where he only scored like one goal and only got a couple of assists, and that this year he definitely bounced back in a way where we expect what Pedro Santos is one of the best winger in MLS as he's shown this season. Now, speaking, of course, talk about the top goal scorer and the top assist leader, Jerzy Zardes, of course, finished with 12 goals, and I definitely think he's going to definitely get some call up during the Gold Cup, and I'll talk about a little bit later about how the Crew has been very smart this offseason in terms of thinking about the future, and how, knowing the fact that there's going to be some of those players that they're going to be missing either due to injury or COVID or even international duty, they seems like they already have thought out that plan by making more acquisition in the off season. But obviously Zardes, I think he's definitely going to get a goal call up, and maybe even get another shot for this U.S. men's national team after, for the past couple of seasons, ever since he left left the Galaxy to go to the Columbus Crew, there's no doubt that he has been been not only rediscover his old form that he has with the Galaxy, but probably even better than he was with all those years with the Galaxy, and has really become one of the best number 9 in the league. Then followed by Pedro Santos with 8 goals, which again I talk about how what a bounce back year he has, and if there was kind of like I don't want to say it was kind of a comeback player of the year type of thing, but if there was an award that says who is the best player that had an incredible bounce back year after they have a tough year from last season, Pedro Santos would definitely get the vote, and maybe even won the award with the way how he completely bounced back after what, as I mentioned, what a horror year that he had last season. Then you got Lucas Arian with 6 goals, followed by Jonas Markto with 3 goals, and then Artur finish off the list with 2 goals to his name. Top assist leader, you got Pedro Santos with 8 goals, then followed by Lucas Arian, Jerzy Zardes, and Artur all with 4 assists, and then Luis Diaz to finish off the list with 3 assists in terms of the top assist leader. So how did the Columbus Crew get to MLS Cups? Well, their road to MLS Cup all started in the first round against the Red Bulls, where they were able to win 3-2 against the Red Bulls. I mean, even though the score line seems very tight, for majority of that game, they were by far the dominant team, and if it wasn't for the Red Bulls, kind of made a late surge in the game, the scoreline would have showed that Columbus was just absolutely dominating the game, and that if they didn't give up those late goals against the Red Bulls, they probably would have got a clean sheet and would have won 3-0 against the Red Bulls. Now in the second round, they of course were able to win against Nashville 2-0 after extra time, and I think out of all these games that they really have to fight for and really kind of had to earn their way to move on to the next round, this game is clearly the one. I mean, Nashville really pretty much put them all the way into extra time, and that that was also the game where there was a lot of people saying that Columbus was kind of in a doom and gloom situation because they were dealing with a COVID outbreak, but somehow in some way they were able to overcome that and move on into the next round and take down one of the Cinderella story of this season and one of the hottest team in the playoffs, that is Nashville SC. Now in the Eastern Conference Final, they were able to win 1-0 against the New England Revolution before in MLS Cup they were able to dispatch the Seattle Sounders, and quite frankly that MLS Cup was basically not only the Lucas Arian show, but also a matter of what happened when one team actually showed up in the MLS Cup and the other team decided to not even bother to show up in the biggest game possible. And I kind of talked about in the last episode how it's got to be not only frustrating if you're a Sounders fan, but also just kind of bewildered the fact that the team just decided not to show up and decided to kind of almost take a day off when you're about to play the biggest game of the season, that is MLS Cup. So how were they able to become MLS Cup champion besides the road to MLS Cup? Well, strong home field advantage is one of the big reasons why they were able to win MLS Cup. And I understand that there's going to be some people that's going to say, well, the Crew got lucky. The fact that they were able to reach MLS Cup and win the whole thing because all their games were played at Mop-Free Stadium. And if they were playing on the road in any of these playoff games, they probably would have not moved on into the next round. And to some extent, I do kind of agree with that argument because the Crew, as I mentioned before, I think they're the only MLS Cup champion in league history to not win a single road game, and yet they still able to win MLS Cup. And that, we know how much they do struggle on the road last season, and they have to go on the road and also face with all those adversity they had in the playoffs. Maybe they wouldn't have moved on into the next round. But that being said, 20 years down the line, when we talk about this Columbus Crew team winning MLS Cup, I don't think anybody is going to talk about how they got lucky because they have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Everybody's going to talk about their run to MLS Cup and talk about Lucas Arian performance in that MLS Cup, and single-handedly I think that was one of the best, if not the best single individual performance I've ever seen in any MLS Cup history. I mean, we have seen a lot of great individual performance in the big game in the past, but that was probably one of the most impressive with the way that not only he was contributed in all three of those goals, but he literally just carried this team on his back and able to win MLS Cup and almost kind of saved the best version of Lucas Zairian into the biggest game as possible. And when you have the best version of Lucas Zairian, yeah, he is basically unstoppable. Like you can try to contain him, but he's basically going to be unstoppable, as the Seattle Sounders found that out in MLS Cup. Now, the next thing, they were able to become MLS Cup champion. As I mentioned, they were able to overcome injuries and COVID outbreak during the playoffs, and I think that is probably the biggest surprise in terms of how they were able to reach MLS Cup, because throughout the season, the Crew has dealt with injuries, but throughout the regular season, you can clearly see those injuries were hampering this team, and basically, I was kind of worried the fact that, this might be a team where the only way that they can go deep into MLS Cup is that they can have most of their squad healthy in this team, and that's still really a big if, knowing the fact that not a lot of teams have been able to stay injury-free, especially with this pandemic situation. And lo and behold, when playoffs begin, they will all once again have to deal with injury with their starting goalkeeper unable until the Eastern Conference Final and in the MLS Cup, or actually no, not even in the Eastern Conference Final, but until the MLS Cup happened. And then of course we know that they had to deal with the COVID outbreak, where they had like 7 players that was tested positive, or actually no, I think it was 8 players that was tested positive for COVID before that game against Nashville, and a lot of people kind of ripped them off with the way that, yeah, when you have that many COVID cases, we kind of saw what happened with Inter Miami when they had a lot of COVID cases heading into a playoff game, and it basically just completely crumbled them. But didn't happen. They were able to overcome that and move on into the next round. And then most impressively in MLS Cup, when they found out that they did not have Pedro Santos and Darlington Nagbe, 2 of the most important player, and especially Nagbe, who's really the heart and soul in that midfield. I remember people already crowning the Seattle Sounders as the MLS Cup champion of 2020, and I remember after the game, not only the fact that I was happy the Crew, of course, were finished, but I kind of took an aim at all those people that said that they have crowned the Seattle Sounders of winning MLS Cup before the game have started, and that I've always said, this is why you play the game. You in a big game like this and in a cup final like this, despite the fact that it's pretty clear that one of the team might be a little bit ill prepared and that they might be dealing with a lot of injuries and adversity, in a cup final like that, anything can happen. And it turns out, I think maybe the Sounders kind of got a little bit overconfident in that, seeing what the Crew had to deal with, and therefore for maybe that might be one of the biggest reason why they weren't able to win that. But I guess the biggest reason why they weren't able to win that was because of the fact that one team showed up in that game, that is the Crew, and one team decided to not show up whatsoever, that is the Sounders, in that MLS Cup final. And then finally, the Lucas Zairian masterclass in the final. I've already talked about that a lot during this video. I mean, that is going to go down as one of the most impressive individual performance I've ever seen a player able to do in MLS Cup history, and down the line we'll always talk about his performance, and he was really one, if not the main reason why the Crew was able to lift the trophy at the end of the day. Now, moving forward for the Columbus Crew, there's no doubt that next year they're going to be one of the favorite, if not the favorite, of winning MLS Cup. And I know it sounds kind of like a cliche saying that, yes, the defending champion always are going to be MLS Cup favorite, because they seems to have the stronger squad heading in to next year and stuff like that. But here's the thing, the reason why I think they could definitely be one of the favorite, if not the favorite, of winning MLS Cup is the next reason. They got even more deeper heading into this offseason, and we've seen before where sometimes when teams fresh off of a win either in MLS Cup or even winning a trophy, they kind of get complacent during the offseason and think that they already have the best team and that next year they can just roll with the best team in the league and expect to reach MLS Cup again. That doesn't usually work out all the time, and that the Crew, to their credit, they realized that, last season, even though they of course won MLS Cup, they also realized that there was some key issue that were able to thankfully overcome in the playoffs, which of course was was the injuries that they had, and they don't really kind of have a lot of depth for last season. So you know what they decided to do? They decided to address that issue and decide to add more depth, getting some key guys like Kevin Molino and even Bradley Wright Phillips, who is going to be the guy that I think is going to cover Jersey Zardes when Zardes does go into the Gold Cup. And they also made a couple even more decent signing that you probably might not heard of, guys like Marlon Harrison that they just recently signed from Minnesota. I've said before how, you know, when Harrison was at Minnesota, he was definitely a great utility player, and it's kind of a shame that the Loons weren't able to re-sign him for next season. But Columbus saw that was a great opportunity for them to snatch him, and now they got a great utility player in that midfield that is already one, if not the most stacked midfield right now in the league. Now, moving on into the last thing in the moving forward for the Crew is that I'm looking forward to their new stadium that they're going to be opening. Their new stadium isn't going to be opening until June, but I've already heard that they're saying that they hope that they're going to have majority of the game that's going to be taking place at that stadium. They're still going to be playing a couple of games that is going to be at their old home at Montfrey Stadium, but they also are saying that they hope to only play 2 games or maybe 3 games at Montfrey Stadium, and they're looking to try to play majority in 14 games this season at home at their brand new stadium. And you know, when I look at that brand new stadium that they built, yeah, Columbus absolutely deserved that brand new stadium. And I even got to talk about in this moving forward series of what a story this team has had, and what just a roller coaster ride this team has had in the past couple of years, where just 2 years ago there was a chance that Columbus was not even gonna be, or the Crew wasn't even gonna be staying in Columbus, and that thankfully with how things have went, with how Preco is no longer their owner, and then the Haslam family decided to take over the team and instantly made them a winner, and kind of looked like the team that of course won the MLS Cup back in 2008. Yeah, what a story this team has gone through, and that there's no doubt that heading into CCL, you know, if there's any team in CCL, any MLS team that I really want the team to pretty much carry the flag of MLS heading into the CONCACAF Champions League next year, and maybe become the first ever MLS team to win the CONCACAF Champions League, it's got to be the Columbus Crew, and the way the stories that they have to go through in the past couple of years. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for my moving forward series for the Columbus Crew. And again, therefore, for this pretty much just conclude the final episode of the moving forward series for 2021. And as we're now heading into the regular season, and we're pretty much already into preseason right now, for these next couple of weeks, I will of course start talking about things that's going to be related to the regular season. I'll probably look at players that, you know, for every single team that I'm going to predict that's going to be the MVP, and players that might need to have a bounce back year. And I might even look at each of these MLS team heading into the upcoming season and see kind of their optimism index, or actually not really optimism index, but more like expectation index of what they feel that they need to do heading into next season. And do they think that next season they must reach MLS Cup, or it's a failure season, or is some of these teams are going to be just happy to maybe just make it to the playoffs, or the fact that it's just a rebuilding year and they don't expect a lot of things heading into to this upcoming season. But obviously that video is going to be one, and some of those ideas I'm going to basically develop in these upcoming weeks, so stay tuned for that. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. If you're a Columbus Crew fan, what do you think this team were able to do to get themselves to MLS Cup champion? And also moving forward, what do you think this team is going to look like heading into this upcoming season? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.